She never imagined her birthday would end like this. A quiet young girl raised by her elderly father, a proud black Marine who spent his life serving his country. They struggled in silence with love as their only wealth. But today, as she blew out her candles, a powerful CEO stepped forward with a life-changing gift. What he gave her left the entire room in tears, and her father on his knees, crying with gratitude. She woke up that morning with no expectations. Her name was Ayanna, only 10 years old, with hair tied into little braids that her father carefully plaited the night before. Their small home smelled of oatmeal and old military polish, her father's scent. He was Sergeant Harold Brooks, a retired black Marine who had spent over 30 years wearing the uniform, defending a country that often overlooked his worth when he took it off. He moved slowly these days, his knees swollen from desert marches and his back bent from years carrying packs heavier than his own weight. But he never complained. To him, his greatest mission was raising Ayanna alone after her. Mother passed away when she was just a baby. On this day, Ayanna wore her cleanest white dress, though slightly faded at the seams. Her father gently wiped her shoes with a damp cloth before they left for the community center. It was where he volunteered as a security guard to keep busy and where local businesses often hosted charity events, but today wasn't about charity. Today was about a CEO named Thomas Reynolds, a towering man in a tailored gray suit who made billions in logistics. He walked through the entrance with his advisors and PR team, ready to sponsor another scholarship program and take photos for corporate goodwill. But as his eyes scanned the room, they stopped on Ayanna. She was sitting quietly in the corner, a tiny cupcake in front of her with one candle flickering. Her father stood behind her, hands folded, watching his little girl with unbreakable love. The room quieted as Mr. Reynolds approached. "Is it your birthday today, sweetheart?" he asked gently. Ayanna looked up shyly and nodded. "Yes, sir." He smiled. "And what do you wish for?" She paused, her eyes glancing at her father, before whispering, "I just wish my daddy's back didn't hurt so he can sleep better." The CEO felt his chest tighten. There was something in her innocence that cracked open the armored walls he had built around his heart. He pulled up a chair, sat beside her, and spoke softly. "Do you know what I wished for when I was your age?" he asked. She shook her head. "I wished that I could help people when I grew up, so they'd never have to worry about money again." Ayanna smiled politely, not quite understanding the weight of his words, but her father did. He stood there, tears welling in his eyes, his rough hands trembling as he reached to steady himself against a table. "Sir, she doesn't need anything from anyone." "She has me," he said, his voice deep but cracking with emotion. Thomas Reynolds looked up at him. "And you've given her everything, Sergeant. Now, let me give her something too." He turned to his assistant and whispered firmly. Within minutes, legal staff gathered around them, drawing up documents. The room buzzed with disbelief as Thomas Reynolds announced, "Today, on Ayanna's 10th birthday, I am gifting her $5 million in a trust fund. It will grow with her, and she will be able to use it for her dreams, her education, her home, for anything she wants. Because every child deserves to know that their dreams are possible." The announcement rippled through the hall like a sudden wind. Cameras flashed, but no one's eyes could turn away from Sergeant Harold Brooks. The old Marine fell to his knees beside his daughter, holding her small hand in his calloused palms. Tears streamed down his face, landing on her little white shoes. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. He had fought wars for freedom, survived deserts for peace, and sacrificed everything for his daughter. But today, in that room filled with polished shoes and clean suits, he felt the true power of honor. A gift not for him, but for the little girl who called him Daddy. Ayanna reached up, touched his cheek, and whispered, "Don't cry. Daddy, I'll still take care of you when I'm big." And in that moment, the old Marine smiled through his tears. Because for the first time in his life, he knew his daughter's future was secure, her dreams unchained, and his mission complete. The news traveled quickly beyond the walls of the community center. Local reporters shared the video of Ayanna's bright smile and her father's tearful embrace. Millions watched as an old Marine, worn by war and life, crumbled to his knees, not from pain, but from overwhelming relief and gratitude. That evening, as the sun set behind their small apartment block, Ayanna and her father sat side by side on their porch. The pink-orange light of dusk bathed their faces. She ate her leftover cupcake slowly, savoring each bite. "Daddy, does this mean I can have a big room with books and art stuff like my teacher said?" she asked, licking frosting from her thumb. He looked at her with misty eyes and nodded. "Yes, baby girl. Anything you want. You can read every book in the world and paint every picture in your heart." She leaned against him, feeling the roughness of his uniform jacket as he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. For a long time, they sat in silence, listening to the cicadas chirp their evening songs. Inside his mind, Harold Brooks traveled back in time. He remembered fighting in deserts far from home, where explosions shook the ground and soldiers cried out for their mothers. He remembered nights under black skies, praying to see his daughter's face again. Each memory was a scar hidden beneath his strong chest. And now, sitting here beside her with hope glimmering ahead, he finally felt those scars begin to heal. The next morning, the CEO's office called to arrange financial advisors and legal processing. Mr. Reynolds himself visited again, this time in a plain sweater and jeans. He brought Ayanna a gift bag filled with books on art, science, and dreaming big. "Always read, Ayanna," he told her gently. "Books will give you wings before you even buy a plane ticket." Her father shook his hand firmly, tears rising. "Once more, thank you, sir. I spent my life teaching her about strength, but today you showed her kindness." Mr. Reynolds smiled, then bent down to Ayanna's level. "One day, when you're grown and successful, promise me something." "What is it?" she asked softly. "Promise me that when you see someone with a dream, but without hope, you'll help them fly too." She nodded, her little braids bouncing, her eyes glowing with determination. "I promise." Years passed swiftly. Ayanna grew into a strong young woman, her mind sharpened by education, her spirit anchored by her father's love. She studied fine arts and medicine, driven to heal and to create. On her graduation day from university, she stood on stage giving her valedictorian speech as a little girl. "I wished only for my daddy's back to stop hurting," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But life gave me more than I ever imagined. A chance, a future, a mission to help others like my father helped me." In the audience, Sergeant Harold Brooks sat proudly in his neatly pressed Marine uniform. His back still ached, and his knees still burned, but his heart soared higher than any pain he ever felt. Tears rolled silently down his weathered cheeks as he watched his little girl, now a woman, become the light he always prayed she would be. After the ceremony, As graduates took pictures and families hugged, Ayana walked over to him and whispered, "Daddy, your back still hurts, doesn't it?" He chuckled softly. "A little baby girl." She smiled. "Then let's go home. I'll make you some ginger tea and massage it for you." That evening, as they sat together in their warm, quiet living room, he looked at her and whispered, "You are my greatest victory, Ayana. I may have fought wars in other lands, but the greatest mission of my life was raising you." She kissed his hand and rested her head on his chest. Outside, the city moved on with its endless noise and light. But inside their small home, there was only peace, love, and the silent knowledge that dreams, when shared with kindness, grow into legacies that can never be measured by money alone. The years continued their silent march. Ayana's career flourished beyond anything her father or even Mr. Reynolds could have imagined. She became a world-renowned pediatric surgeon and artist, known for painting vivid murals of children smiling in hospital wings around the country. Each stroke of her brush carried the echoes of her father's strength and the CEO's kindness. One winter evening, she was invited to speak at a global leadership summit. Leaders from every continent gathered under bright chandeliers, cameras, capturing each moment for the world to see. Ayana took the stage in a graceful navy dress, her hair braided elegantly down her back, her posture tall and unbreakable. She began with a soft voice, but each word carried a force that silenced the crowd. "When I was 10, a CEO gave me $5 million. People called it luck, a miracle, an act of charity. But to me, it was a mission. A mission to turn his kindness into 1,000 acts of kindness for others. Because true wealth is not what we keep, it is what we share." The audience remained silent, hanging on her every word. She continued, her eyes glassy with tears. "But before any CEO gave me anything, there was a man who gave me everything. My father, a black Marine who fought for this country even when this country forgot to fight for him. A man who taught me that integrity isn't a lesson, it's a life lived in quiet sacrifice." Her voice cracked as she looked down at the front row, where Sergeant Harold Brooks sat in his wheelchair, his hair now fully white, but his eyes shining with pride and tears. She stepped off the stage as the crowd rose in thunderous applause. Ignoring all cameras and dignitaries, she walked straight to him. Kneeling down, she took his frail hands in hers and said softly, "Daddy, I kept my promise. I helped them fly." He smiled, tears rolling down his sunken cheeks. His voice was faint but clear. "And you, baby girl, you flew farther than I ever dreamed." That night, as she tucked him into bed in her beautiful home overlooking the city skyline, he whispered one final prayer under his breath. "Thank you, God, for letting me see her soar." Weeks later, he passed away peacefully in his sleep, a gentle smile resting on his lips. At his funeral, Ayana stood before hundreds of mourners, fellow Marines, neighbors, hospital staff, and children whose lives she had saved. She placed her trembling hand on his casket, decorated with the folded American flag, and spoke with a breaking yet strong voice. "My father taught me that courage is not in medals or money, but in waking up each day and loving someone so deeply that your own pain becomes small in the light of their dreams. That is why I will spend my life serving others, because that is the legacy he gave me." As the bugle played taps and Marines saluted under the gray sky, Ayana closed her eyes, feeling the cold breeze against her tear-streaked face. But inside, she felt warmth. a warmth that came from knowing her father's mission was never just about surviving war. It was about raising a daughter who would change the world with love, honor, and unbreakable purpose. And so she walked forward, leaving the graveyard with quiet strength, carrying not only his memory, but his eternal mission within her heart. Years passed, and Ayana's name became known not only in hospitals and universities, but in homes across America. Her foundation, named the Harold Brooks Legacy Fund, built schools and clinics in underserved communities, each with murals painted by her hand, murals of strong fathers holding their children under golden skies. It's inspired by her deepest memory. Every year on her birthday, she visited one special place before celebrations began, her father's grave. The stone was simple, engraved with Sergeant Harold Brooks, United States Marine Corps. His greatest mission was love. On her 40th birthday, Ayana sat by his grave in a quiet dawn. She placed fresh white lilies beside the flagstone and poured him a cup of black coffee, just like she used to prepare for him each morning as a child. She sipped hers as the first rays of sun warmed her face. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling in the cool morning air, "I know you're watching me. I kept my promise. I helped so many fly, but I still miss you every day." The wind rustled through the oak trees around the cemetery, lifting the edge of her scarf. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply, feeling as though his strong hand rested on her shoulder once more. A quiet tear rolled down her cheek as she continued softly, "Today, I'm donating another $5 million to rebuild the Children's Hospital. In your hometown, I want every child to feel safe and loved, the way you always made me feel." She stood, brushed off her knees, and saluted his grave with a crisp, practiced motion, a salute she learned just for him. As she turned to leave, the sun broke through the dawn clouds, bathing her in golden light. Her silhouette stood strong and graceful against the rising sun, and in that moment, though silent and unseen, it was as if the spirit of an old Marine smiled down upon his daughter with eternal pride. Whispering on the wind, "Mission accomplished. My baby girl, mission accomplished." As the years unfolded like pages in a well-loved book, Ayana aged with grace. Silver strands wove gently into her long braids. Her hands bore faint lines of time, but her eyes remained lit with purpose. She continued her mission quietly, never seeking fame, but letting her deeds echo her father's strength. On her 65th birthday, surrounded by students, doctors, artists, and children from her foundation, she stood in the grand hall of the Harold Brooks Pediatric Center, her life's crowning achievement. Photographs lined the entrance walls. Her as a little girl with cupcakes, her teenage art exhibitions, her white coat ceremony, and her many humanitarian awards. But right at the center, framed in gold leaf, was a photograph of Sergeant Harold Brooks kneeling beside a 10-year-old Ayana with tears in his eyes. The day she received the CEO's gift. During the ceremony, she took the stage slowly, her cane tapping softly on the polished marble floor. The applause quieted as she adjusted the microphone and looked out over the sea of faces, children giggling in front rows, parents with grateful tears, young doctors inspired by her legacy. Her voice, though aged, carried wisdom that silenced the crowd. "Today is not about me. Today is about a promise I made to my father when I was just a girl. He was a Marine who fought for this country, but his true battle was raising me alone with love and dignity. That day, when a CEO gave me $5 million, I promised would help others fly too. I spent my life keeping that promise. She paused, her eyes misting as she gazed at her father's portrait. Daddy. I did it, she whispered softly, her lips trembling. Taking a deep breath, she continued to the crowd. I built this place so no child would ever have to wish their father's back didn't hurt. So no father would ever feel helpless watching his child's dream beyond their reach. Because I believe that when you help one child fly, you lift generations. The hall rose in a standing ovation, but Ayanna only smiled humbly. As she stepped down from the stage, her closest students surrounded her, hugging her gently, their tears soaking into her dress sleeves. They walked her outside into the golden afternoon light. She sat quietly on a stone bench, under an ancient oak tree planted in her father's honor. The plaque beneath it read, "In memory of Sergeant Harold Brooks, a father's love is the seed of a better world." Closing her eyes, she let the breeze wash over her tired face. Birds sang in the branches above. Somewhere deep within her spirit, she felt his presence warm, strong, protective, as it always was. And she whispered into the wind, "Thank you for giving me wings, Daddy. I'll come see you soon." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon in a wash of gold and lavender, Ayanna passed peacefully in her sleep, resting in her favorite reading chair by her window. A gentle smile touched her lips as though she heard his voice calling her home. In the days that followed, her funeral became a national remembrance. People from every walk of life came to pay respects to the little girl who rose with a Marine's love and a CEO's kindness, and who spent her life making sure others could rise too. As her casket was lowered beside her father's under the oak tree, the engraved words on her tombstone read, "Ayanna Brooks, daughter of a hero, giver of hope. May her wings lift us all." And in that quiet cemetery, under rustling oak leaves, two souls were finally reunited, an old Marine and his little girl, their missions complete, their love eternal. Years later, long after Ayanna's passing, children continued to run through the hallways of the Harold Brooks Pediatric Center, their laughter echoing like music in the grand atriums. Doctors taught new generations, pointing to her portraits, and telling the story of a little girl whose life changed with a single act of kindness, and whose dreams grew wings strong enough to carry thousands. On the anniversary of her passing, the foundation hosted a quiet remembrance under the oak tree, where she and her father now rested. Candles flickered in the evening breeze, illuminating their tombstones side by side. Children painted tiny murals on pebbles and placed them around the roots, each stone carrying a word: hope, love, courage, honor, kindness. That evening, as the last candle burned low, a young girl named Maya stayed behind. She was 8 years old, fighting a rare illness, but her spirit remained bright. She sat cross-legged between their graves, tracing Ayanna's name with her small finger. "Miss Ayanna." She whispered into the dusk, "I promise I'll be a doctor one day, too. I'll help kids like you helped me." Her mother called softly from the path. Maya stood, brushed off her dress, and skipped away under the rustling oak leaves. The wind carried her promise up into the darkening sky, where it mingled with the quiet whispers of eternity. And if you listened closely that night, beyond the crickets and the hum of distant city lights, you could almost hear two voices woven into the breeze, one deep and warm, the other soft and bright, speaking together. Mission accomplished. Their wings are strong. Our love lives on. The oak tree swayed gently, its branches cradling the moonlight like an old protector. And beneath its silent watch, the legacy of a black marine's love and a little girl's dreams continued to grow, rippling through generations unseen. A reminder that life's greatest victory is not what we gain, but what we give. Decades passed. The world changed with its rushing technologies, glowing cities, and silent struggles. Yet at the Harold Brooks Pediatric Center, every dawn still began the same way, with children gathering under the oak tree to whisper their wishes. One morning, as golden rays broke through the branches, a young doctor stood beside the tree, her white coat billowing slightly in the breeze. Her name was Dr. Maya Harper, the same little girl who once sat cross-legged before Ayana's grave. Now grown, with bright, intelligent eyes and a gentle smile. She had returned to serve where she was once healed, in her daily routine. She paused at the memorial portraits lining the sunlit corridor. First Sergeant Harold Brooks, standing tall, in his Marine uniform with eyes that carried centuries of dignity. Then Ayana, painted with soft realism, her hands outstretched, surrounded by wings of colorful children's drawings. Every evening before she went home, Dr. Maya would walk out to the oak tree alone. She'd place her hand on Ayana's grave and whisper, "I saved 3 more kids today, Miss Ayana. Your mission is still alive." She'd kneel before Sergeant Brooks' grave, tears welling in her eyes as she whispered, "And sir, I promise to protect them like you protected her." One chilly winter night, as snowflakes drifted silently onto the tree's bare branches, the hospital staff gathered to hold their annual candlelight vigil. Children sang soft songs under glowing lanterns. Parents prayed in hushed tones, and nurses wept silently, overwhelmed by the beauty of the scene, as the choir of little voices rose into the quiet, starry sky. Dr. Maya closed her eyes and imagined she saw Ayana there among them, wearing her favorite white dress from her childhood. Her hair braided, standing beside her father in his Marine dress blues. Both stood hand in hand, smiling with peace and pride in that vision. Sergeant Harold Brooks placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder and nodded toward Dr. Maya, his deep voice echoing like a heartbeat through the universe. "Do you see, baby? Girl, your wings are still lifting them." Ayana smiled brightly, her eyes shimmering with love as she whispered back, "And they always will, Daddy, because love never dies. It only grows." The wind swirled gently through the gathering, flickering candle flames, but never extinguishing them. Snowflakes landed softly on warm cheeks, melting like quiet tears of grace. Children giggled at the sight, their joy echoing into the cold night. Long after the vigil ended, when the lights dimmed and silence returned, the oak tree stood tall, under the moon's tender glow, watching over their resting place. The engraved words on their graves shone faintly in silver moonlight, "Together forever. Mission complete, wings eternal." And so, in this world of fleeting moments and passing glories, the love of a father and daughter remained unbreakable. An invisible force that lifted countless lives, whispering to all who listened that true wealth lies not in what we hold, but in what we set free. Generations continued to flow through the halls of the Harold Brooks Pediatric Center. Each child who entered carried their own battles, illnesses, poverty, silent fears, but they were met with murals of hope on every wall. Paintings of soaring birds, strong fathers hugging daughters, and children reaching for the sun with fearless smiles. One late summer evening, during the annual Wings of Hope Gala, Dr. Maya Harper stood at the grand podium. Her silver hair glistened under the chandelier lights as her steady voice filled the hall. "Tonight," she said, pausing to let her words settle into every heart, "we celebrate not only the children we heal, but the mission that began with a single act of kindness and a lifetime of sacrifice." She gestured to the towering mural behind her, the largest in the building. It showed Ayanna as a child blowing out her birthday candle, her father kneeling behind her in tears, and a figure of the CEO standing before them with an outstretched hand holding light, instead of money, symbolizing that his gift was more than wealth. It was hope itself, Dr. Maya continued, her voice trembling with emotion. Sergeant Harold Brooks gave his life to raise a daughter with courage and dignity. Ayanna Brooks used her life to give hope and healing to the world. Their mission became mine, and now it becomes yours. She paused, scanning the faces of young doctors, nurses, volunteers, and donors, all holding flickering candles in reverent silence. Because legacies are not stone statues or empty words on plaques. They are living missions passed from heart to heart, generation to generation, whispering one truth through time. Love endures beyond our final breath. As the room fell silent in tears and awe, a choir of children began to sing softly, their pure voices rising like dawn, light breaking the darkness. Outside, the oak tree stood bathed in moonlight, its leaves whispering against the night sky. Beneath, its protective branches rested to graves side by side. Fireflies flickered around them, illuminating the engraved words, "Together forever. Mission complete. Wings eternal." That night, as Dr. Maya walked alone to her car, she glanced back at the towering building glowing with golden lights. She closed her eyes and whispered to the heavens, "Thank you, Miss Ayanna. Thank you, Sergeant Brooks. I promise, your wings will never stop flying." And in that quiet moment, as a gentle wind swept through the parking lot, lifting her hair and carrying it skyward, it felt as though two eternal souls smiled down upon her, proud, grateful, and at peace. Sometimes in life, a single act of kindness can echo beyond generations. Sometimes, a father's love becomes the wings for a daughter to rise. And sometimes, a daughter's dreams light the path for countless others to follow. Remember this story when you feel powerless, when the world seems too heavy, or when hope feels far away. Because the truth is simple. Love endures. Kindness multiplies. And the legacy of hope lives forever. If this story touched your heart, share it today and become a part of a mission that will never end.